When I first kind of started writing scripts, I had this feeling that like I knew what I was trying to achieve. Like
Mhm.
I knew what I wanted writers or readers to feel at certain points, but I just kind of had this feeling like I'm not sure if I've actually done it. And editors will tell you if you've done it, and if not, like what you need to change.
Welcome back to Inspired Inc., the Comics Wellspring podcast, a show where we promote indie comic creators and become inspired by what they create and their journey of creating it. I'm your host, Brandon Bloxdorf, and today on the show, we have writer Sarah Cooke joining us, and we talk about why you should be taking risks and challenging yourself as a creator, and how that can take you further than you ever imagined, how an editor can help you bring out more emotion onto your page, and how indie comics can continue to highlight more diverse creators. All this and so much more on today's Inspired Inc. But you've done a few books already, and you've kickstarted and crowdfunded some of them. And I know a book we could read online for free as well too. But like, what are your thoughts about crowdfunding and going about that approach?
Yeah, I mean, it's helped me so much. It's why I've been able to make my comics. And I think it's being able to crowdfund and being able to have a couple of finished comics out there is just kind of what you need to have in order to be able to in order for people to be able to kind of see what you're all about as a creator. Um, and it's I think that's kind of like where you what you need to do to get started. And I don't know how I would have been able to do it without crowdfunding. It's a
Yeah,
lot of work. It's not easy, but it's I don't know where I'd be without it.
yeah, it's kind of insane how all of us really have to lean into this effort just to get like, and I
Mhm.
feel like almost no other medium is like this either, like I know you could get grants
Mhm.
for filmmaking. I know,
Yeah.
music, you're kind of on your own to be honest with music, but you still have like the resources and able to like get it onto Spotify and people's faces
Yeah.
and stuff like that, where it's really kind of tangible. But comics feel like like a really hard feat to get completed. You really do need to gather all your armed forces to get this book someone can read in 10, 15 minutes that you've been working on for a year. Um,
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
how long have you been working on your series now? Like, what's your timeline been just being
Well,
involved with your books?
I started writing it about 3 years ago. um, and then I crowdfunded the first issue last year. We started the artist for the first issue, Ime Holly. She started with the artwork. I think it was around January of 2022, or it might have been like December 2021 when she
Nice.
got started, and then we crowdfunded it in October. And she was great. She was awesome. She was working full time and also taking classes at night. So I have no idea how she pulled it off. Which is why she wasn't able to continue on with issue two, which is totally understandable. Um, but then Easy to Savino started the artwork for issue number two in around March of 2023, and then we crowdfunded it around the end of October, and I'm doing the fulfillment for it now, actually.
Oh, nice. That's
I've
a
got
fun
stacks
time.
of comics and all kinds of stuff right over here off camera.
Dude, that's awesome. I mean, fulfillment is, I think a lot of people forget that's another like month of work for everybody.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
do you include extra like goodies and everything with your fulfillments? Like what goes on with your packaging? Like what's your packaging process? I don't think enough
Yeah.
people talk about that, to be honest.
Yeah, it changed, well, a little bit from the first issue. I didn't since it was just the first issue, I didn't have any like really extras. I had one variant, and that was pretty much it. It was the comic and the one variant. This time we did three variants, and we have some buttons and some stickers that we're sending out too. I use Backer Kit, which helps a ton. And then just I print out my own labels through Pirate Ship and just send them out from my house.
Nice. The pirate ship
But
is life
that's
saving. That's such a
it.
helpful site. Yeah.
Yeah, like waiting. I don't know how I'd like waiting in line at the post office. It would
Yeah.
be bananas.
It would be insane. Yeah. Especially this time of year, trying to
Yeah.
just send out that type of stuff. And then how did you get involved, creating your own book, doing all this, and you do talent search for Mad Cave, you have your own Substack where you do indie resources, like you do a
Yeah.
lot of stuff in the background as well. Where did all of that kind of come about with you?
It kind of just grew as I tried to expand my audience. A lot of kind of initially deciding what I want to do. I'm in Taylor James's Comics Launch group, and I took his classes.
Nice.
Um,
He
yeah,
does
which
that
has been
podcast as well too, correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's which
Okay.
is a great podcast. Um, and so a lot of like really early on, back before I even did the crowdfunder for the first issue of No Spell, and I was kind of trying to figure out how to grow my audience, I learned a lot of that through his course,
Cool.
um, which is why I started the Substack and all of that. Uh, and then the other stuff that I've been doing, I kind of entered some anthologies along the way. The entering the Mad Cave, I actually took a Mike Martz did a class through the Kubert School last fall,
Oh, cool.
and I took his class. And one of the Mike Jaden, one of the other students in the class, mentioned the Mad Cave talent search and kind of sent out the link to it, and it looked amazing. And I decided to enter it after that. And then the negative, or no, he sent the negative space.
Oh,
He
yes,
sent
negative
the link
space.
to
Yeah.
the negative space, Mike Jaden. So I entered that one, found that kind of through the Kubert School class. And then Mad Cave, I it was so competitive. I was like, I don't know if I'm even like if it's worth it to enter it, but it would be amazing. So after kind of reading a little bit more about it, just decided to give it a chance, take my chances.
Nice. I think risk taking, no matter what level you're at as an indie comic creator, is worth it. You know what I mean? If you
Yeah,
get rejected, if you get put in, like no matter what, that outcome is going to boost you up somehow.
yeah,
Because
totally.
rejection kind of builds that skin. It lets you know,
Mhm.
hopefully, maybe an instance of what you need to work on. Especially if
Yeah,
you're kind of insecure about it. And it's one of those things that, like, whenever I give someone a copy of my work, I instantly know every mistake that's in it. That's like,
yeah.
especially when you're asking for feedback, you just instantly know everything you need to fix as soon as you hand it off. And so,
Mhm.
like, entering those competitions, entering those, talent searches, they open you up, but like, win or lose, like, it's the process that really does make a difference for you. Do you think that's helped boost your confidence and, like,
Oh, for
the
sure.
process of all that?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, even before the competitions, just working with editors has helped me so much. Um, and then I think, like with the negative space competition, what you win if you are one of the semifinalists, finalists, and winners, win mentoring sessions with professionals in the industry, and that was huge. And I think built my confidence a ton, just being able to get that feedback and make those connections. And then with the Mad Cave, it kind of was, I think, more about wanting to build my confidence a little bit more, because I knew Mike Martz through the class that I had taken with him, and before that too, I had reached out to him, just kind of looking for some advice, and he was super gracious with his time, and kind of went back and forth in some emails with me, just sharing advice. Um, but he hadn't seen a lot of my writing, and I kind of wanted to be like, okay, well, I know him. I just want to show that I have something that's like worthy of submitting to this competition. I wasn't expecting to win it or anything, but I just kind of wanted to challenge myself to get to the point where I had written something that I felt like I could submit. So I think, yeah, entering those competitions is huge as far as the boosting confidence, for sure.
How do you think, like, especially as an indie creator, a lot of us are doing stuff all on our own, and you're not getting
Yeah.
feedback unless it's from like close friends or maybe some other friends that
Mhm.
are doing things. But how do you think an editor really boosted you up and really helped you and like cleared up your story and made it take shape? Like, what was their involvement to really, help you out?
Yeah. I think I've worked with a few different editors, and they've all been great. And I think it's when I first kind of started writing scripts, I had this feeling that like I knew what I was trying to achieve. Like
Mhm.
I knew what I wanted writers or readers to feel at certain points, but I just kind of had this feeling like I'm not sure if I've actually done it. And editors will tell you if you've done it, and if not, like what you need to change. And so just kind of having that feedback that is neutral,
Mhm.
that's not friends or family, and having that kind of feedback, I think really helped me be able to see my own writing with a little bit more distance. So
Makes
then when I
sense.
went back, and made the edits, and then later on when I started with a new script, I could feel like I was being able to be kind of more intentional with my writing,
Mm.
and more. Yeah, I guess intentional just is the right word. Kind of like I knew how to use my writing tools a little bit better to kind of get the effect that I was going for.
Yeah,
And that's
no,
still something like
100%.
I feel like I still have so many ways that I want to continue growing as far as that goes. But yeah.
Yeah, you want to convey emotions. You want to have people in the right mindsets when they're, turning the page and when they're entering a scene and everything. So, like, I get what you mean. Sometimes you're just like, I know what I want them to think and feel, but
Yeah.
like sometimes your alignment, your placement. I always compare comics to a
Mhm.
puzzle piece, like where you place your pieces and
Exactly. Yeah.
how it all lines up. Sometimes you just need to swap two things. And you're like, oh, these two panels swapped, or just changing this dialogue in this one totally can change the landscape of what's going on here. And it's really hard when you're just like stuck and trying to, it's like you're stuck in a gear and you can't
Yeah.
maneuver, and you kind of need someone to be like, oh, you just do this real fast. And you're like, oh, brilliant. Thank you. Finally, something. Um,
Yeah.
y-
Exactly.
like putting out your own books and writing and doing all that, like how did you discover your artist? I always know that's a big hurdle for a lot of, writers going into the industry early. Where did you come across these other creators?
Yeah, mostly I've connected with the artists I've worked with on Instagram and DeviantArt. Easy, I actually connected with him a long time ago through Fiverr. And he did some of the early promotional art for No Spell, and he did the back cover art for issue number one, and the interior cover art. Um, so a lot of it is just kind of going to the places where the artists are, and looking through their art and seeing if it's kind of a match for what you are looking for. One of the editors I work with, Brittany Matter, suggested a bunch of artists for another project that I have coming up. That was right before the holiday, so I haven't had a chance to go through their stuff yet. But yeah, that's another way, just kind of connecting with like other people who other people know,
Yeah.
creators who you've worked with, or editors who you've worked with, and people they know who might be a good fit.
Awesome. Yeah. Cause I know, especially starting out and trying to, as you start broadening your horizons a bit more, you have another opportunity coming your way too. Like trying to find the right people that demonstrate your work and the story that matters for it
Yeah.
too. Too often have I come across stories that, like, oh, this artwork's beautiful and the story's great, but it doesn't seem like you guys were on the right page for this, Like
Mhm.
I love having that, like, kind of, finding an artist and a writer, pairing them together. It's kind of like dating. You have to like figure out, talk a little bit, go through the motions, make sure you understand. Communication's a big thing with stuff like that.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. And so it's like, making sure you're on that same vibe and the same future goals. And coming
Yeah.
across someone like that, it might take a couple, maybe, people you pass through the pile, but like once you find
Mhm.
them and you build upon the series, you kind of feel unstoppable. And that's always like the most encouraging part.
Yeah, because when you find an artist who's on the same page with you, it's, I mean, they think of stuff that you wouldn't have thought of, and they might arrange a page a little differently, but it's like better than you would have done it. It continues to grow and improve the project.
Do you do like full scripts? Like, do you do very Marvel methody stuff? What's your style with your scripts?
I do pretty full script. But I always try to tell artists that like it is a pretty full script, but if you have a suggestion for doing something better, like definitely suggest it, because I am also very open to that. I think it's important to be open to doing things differently. But just kind of the way my brain works, I have to write full scripts to kind of keep track of where I am, in my own writing and in my own head. Doing a I haven't really attempted a script yet that's looser, more kind of like Marvel style. I feel like it would be kind of anxiety inducing for me.
I
I
totally
might give it
understand.
a shot at some point, but my brain likes fuller scripts.
No, 100%. I do full scripts, I say now like 98% of the time. This
Mhm.
amazing artist I'm working with, China Rosemaria, she actually looked at a plot idea I had for an issue and then she just worked on it. It was like a little
Wow.
12-page like story and she just like, did it all herself and then was like, "You want to do the words over this?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, and it really is one of the most challenging things
Yeah.
I've had to do because now it's like I don't want her to have to. It's not like a script where you could go back and like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I'll edit that page or just take out that panel
Yeah.
and I'll do it." It's like, "Oh, the art's done. I've
Mhm.
got to make my words fit this perfectly." And luckily, she's a very talented storyteller, so it makes my job way easier. But that nerve-inducing aspect, yeah, I totally
Yeah.
feel you on that, 100%. What can you tell us anything about this upcoming project too, or is this something that you still have very on the down low at the moment as well?
It's a sci-fi that
Oh,
is. I have the first draft of the first issue written, and I'm planning for it to be a 4-issue series. Um, so yeah, it's about a space station, and that's the name of the space station is the Mayfly, and it's kind of old and outdated and about to be decommissioned. And the main character lives there and has grown up there and is trying to save it, and ends up getting kind of pulled into a much bigger story than just saving this one space station.
oh, and so do you think of your stories as full like multi-issue arcs, or do you still try to think of them as like a smaller contain, maybe a one shot or a short story, and then build upon it?
I've done several shorts, so I feel like I have that mode where if I
Mhm.
know that it's going to be like I'm intending to do something shorter. A lot of the stories that I hope to start working on sometime in the not too distant future are longer arcs. Um, but then it's taking them from the longer arc and then breaking them down into each issue's arc too.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's actually a great point as well. Not just to have one big arc, especially if you're doing multi-issue, but make sure your individual issues have a full type of arc and story going along with it as well.
Yeah.
How do you feel like what's your writing process like as you prepare to do something like this with and you're working with, arcs and breaking down issue to issue? What do you kind of build upon? Do you kind of start with just like, okay, this is the plot and I'm just going to kind of chop it up a little bit more and create my three story arc and everything? What's your little map?
Yeah, I start with kind of like a half page to like page outline of the whole story. And then I'll do like a little bit longer outline that's maybe like a paragraph or a couple paragraphs per issue. Um, and then I'll do a longer issue, a longer outline that kind of goes sort of scene by scene, issue by issue. So I've got it outlined in quite a bit of detail before I start writing. And then with the last couple of projects that I've outlined but haven't started writing yet, I've worked with my editors at that outline phase
Mhm.
just to kind of make sure that all the story pieces are fitting together. And then once I've got that pretty well solidified, then I start writing. But there's always stuff that's going to change a little bit when you start
Yeah.
writing. So I try to leave space for that too.
Yeah, that's always that discovery period as you're just kind of
Mhm.
really seeing the full picture, like in just instead of just fragmented ideas and you're just seeing the growth of it. That's one of my favorite parts is just seeing it change
Mhm.
direction. And sometimes I wind up with a story I didn't really thought I started off with. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, and
it's
it's typically
interesting.
positive. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of like, I don't know, it kind of impresses you a little bit, being like, I didn't know we were going to go there. Like, this was, and if it
Yeah,
turns you around, it's probably going to turn that reader around too, which is really
yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
That part of it is always really exciting. Stuff comes up that you totally didn't plan.
Yeah. And speaking of that too, like, you've been doing all this work and I checked out your Substack because
Oh,
I love
cool.
Substack. It's something I've
Yeah.
kind of been dabbling with since it came about.
Mhm.
And you have your indie creator resources on that as well.
Mhm.
And I was really, really happy with some of the stuff that like I kind of noticed on there too. You mentioned like Scott
Yeah.
Snyder Substack. I was
Mhm.
subscribed to that one for a while, and that it really gave me insight from the beginning
Yeah.
when he started doing those breakdown videos and just talking about craft. And I don't think there's enough YouTube or like creators talking about their actual craft and breaking down things in detail the way he does. I think
Mhm.
even in your Substack, you mentioned that he goes way past your typical teacher and really gets you to know the story, in a very deeper level.
Yeah.
What got you to bring all that out to share it with the world and kind of become an indie resource person at this point too?
Yeah, it was I felt like there was so much when I was just really first starting out. I felt like
Mhm.
there's kind of a steep learning curve because there's so much to know. There's like craft stuff, and there's working with artists, and there's kickstarting stuff that you have to know. And I've been doing a lot of my own lettering, so I was like teaching myself Illustrator, and there's so much and so many different facets that when you're just getting started out, it's like, where do I even get started?
Mhm.
Um, so I thought if I could give something to people who are really kind of at that phase where they're just starting out, and it's like, okay, here are some good places to start. Like, there's more that you're going to have to learn after that, but these are some good places to get you started. I was hoping that that would be something that would be helpful. That's a lot of, I think, like with Tyler James's group, that's a lot of what I got out of it. And I thought if I could do a little bit of something like that, um, hopefully people would get use out of it.
Yeah, no, and I feel like I encourage anyone that's listening or watching this right now to check out the Substack link below and sign up
Oh,
for it
thank
because
you.
that first newsletter is just so eye catching, And I opened up that file and I was just amazed with everything. You listed
Oh,
Alan Moore's book and some like great comic book resource books as well. I think something I don't know. This is a personal opinion, but there's a podcast called "You Are a Storyteller."
oh,
And I
cool.
think you would love it. I've encouraged a lot of people. I think I've mentioned it here on this show as well, and they don't really update as often, but they have so many core craft elements that I
Mhm.
just adore and I've used over and over again, and it's something I kind of go back to whenever I start a new story. I feel like you would really love it. So if you look up "You Are a Storyteller," I
I'll
think as a
definitely look at
fellow craft nerdy person, you would just absolutely love every episode inside of it.
that. I love that craft stuff. Like with the Scott Snyder classes, they're great. They're like 2 hours long, but they're fascinating.
Yeah, and it's you don't feel so intimidated kind of when you kind of see these creators either. And you kind of get a mindscape into their mind and seeing someone as successful as Scott and what he's done and the triumphs he's kind of
Mhm.
gone through. And especially what he's doing with his own creator owned books at this point, I think is very encouraging for everybody. He built such a establishment with his DC stuff, but his creator owned is really like where that imagination comes out. And I
Yeah.
feel like us as creators and fans, and clearly, you're a Batman fan as well from the Gotham, the Bat symbol in the
Yeah.
background. It's one of those things like we love our Marvel DC stuff, but like it wasn't until I started really getting involved with indie people and indie comics that I realized how imaginative the
Yeah.
world can be, and there's so many stories you miss out on if you just stick to those top two, publishers at that point too.
Yeah, it's funny. And I feel like I've been like the more and more you delve into the indie stuff in the indie world, you see how I feel like how the possibilities for comics as a medium, it's
Yeah.
such an interesting medium, and so unique. And there's so many, I feel like there are stories that are just like perfectly suited for comics. Like, I feel like sometimes I'll even see like a novel and I'll be like, this would have been a better comic.
Oh, yeah. I can
um,
totally see what you mean by that. Yes.
but it's, yeah, you find a lot more, I think, of that kind of imaginative stuff when you start to delve into indies more, for sure.
I think, some people just think of it just so much as a superhero genre and,
Mhm.
that like it's explosive sci-fi, Jack Kirby-ness type of, stuff going on that they forget what you can do with just art and storytelling. And that's really what it is. It's not just like floppy kids books. It's art
Mhm.
plus storytelling. And you put it together and you get this magnificent thing that you can't really put on film. You really can't put it on the TV. You have to
Yeah.
just sit there and enjoy. And it's not, just for kids. It's not just for
Mhm.
adults either. There's so much of it in there that you can pull from almost anything you pick up. And I love that, like, the diversity it has within it and the
Yeah.
possibilities that it could just keep opening your mind more and more. And as we've gone into like a society that everything is 15 seconds,
Mhm.
clips where you have to get attention immediately, comics are still the one thing. You could have a short issue, you could have a longer graphic. There's a way for you to enjoy it somehow. And, if it's brief or if it's long form.
Yeah, it's such a versatile medium, and I think that's the thing that like when people think of it just as like superhero stories, and I love superhero stories, but it's like that's the genre, and comics is the medium.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
can do anything in that medium, any genre, any type of story. And because it's the type of medium it is, that it's visual, but it's different from film because of the way that like time works in comics. Um, there's so many things that I think you can like. There are things that you can do in film that you can't do in comics,
Hmm.
but there are also things that you can do in comics that you can't do in film, and it just makes it such a cool and versatile and like expansive medium.
Yeah, and it's a lot of you mentioned the Alan Moore book in your
Mhm.
Substack read, and he always said that like Watchmen was unfilmable, and he was creating comics in the '80s that anything he made, he was like, it's unfilmable. It's impossible for
Yeah.
you to do so. Do you think
Mhm.
that stands true for comics, or do you feel like no matter what, there's a way to adapt it to some point, like they have over the years, or do you think there's like a winning point between the two?
I think that's kind of true for any medium. Like even novels, I think are unfilmable too. And like you're always going to lose something when you switch
Hmm.
mediums because it's made for the tools that you have available in that particular medium. So if you have a comic that has a lot of like internal narration, you might not want to have a narrator giving that much internal narration in a film. So you're going to lose something. You can still tell the story,
Hmm.
um, but it might not have the exact same impact. Uh, so I think I don't know. And I think some are probably more filmable than others.
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
yeah, depending on how much, yeah, I guess just depending on the layout and the format of the comic. Um, but yeah, I think that, I don't know.
It's such a weird thing because it's like it's exactly what you're saying. You're going to
Yeah.
lose some sort of sustenance, like
Yeah.
from no matter what direction you put. Even if you try to do, I actually just got a novelization version of Kingdom Come. I didn't know there was a novelization of it
Mm-hmm.
too. So I'm really interested to see like the comparisons between the novel and the
Yeah.
comic, and what stays true. What's like sometimes they expose things more in a novelization. Inner thoughts a bit more and things like that. So I guess it depends what level you're looking for in
Yeah.
your story, or what depth you want inside of it. I think novels really great for really going, even though you could do it within comics too, but much more deeper, in depth, like inner monologue narrations, really using the prose to bring out the environment. Comics, you could do that visually, just like film. So it's always just trying to pick out what can be done right. And I still feel like they haven't gotten comic book movies like right just yet.
I
I think we're
know.
still,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's always missing
Mhm.
like that. I feel like it's always missing the impact that comics have. And I don't know how to describe it or really put it into words, but comics always hit me a certain way, whereas film, and especially comic book films, really just haven't resonated or sent me the right message that comics have sent me before.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, it's hard to say that there would be a comic that is unfilmable, like Alan Moore said.
Yeah.
Like, I think
I
you can get a decent movie out of most comics, but I think you're also losing something. And I agree that a lot of the comic book movies, like they don't hit the same as the comics. I mean, there are some great comic book movies, but they a lot of the time also just don't hit quite the same.
Yeah, they're looking for something and they just haven't got that formula at all.
Hmm.
But I feel like it's not going to stop anytime soon. So we'll see how that
Yeah.
evolves over the years. Where did you start with your writing? I'm really curious because if just like where your writing came from. Like, have you been writing since you were a kid? Did you want to become a writer as you grew up?
Yeah, it's been a process. Like I was writing when I was a kid and kind of always knew that I wanted to do something with writing.
Mhm.
And I think like deep down, always wanted to write fiction. But it kind of took me a long time to get there. Because I think I had a lot of kind of self doubt stuff. Um, and just fear of like it's an uncertain career field and all of that.
Mhm.
So I was doing a lot of kind of more journalistic writing for a long time. When I was in school, I studied creative writing, but I focused on poetry because I also love poetry, and I've written a bunch of it. But for some reason, like in my head, it seemed more like within my skill set to write poetry. I just had this kind of like I had convinced myself that like story layout and all of that stuff, like I just won't be good at that. um, so I kind of stuck with poetry writing for a while, but finally, like it was really deep down, fiction was the thing that I wanted to write, and I loved comics, and I wanted to write comics. So I kind of eventually was like, this is what I want to do. I'm just going to give it a shot, and just jumped in, and I wrote a couple of scripts that were just not good.
As we
um,
have.
yeah. But it was learning the medium, and I was learning how to write comic scripts, and learned a lot through that process. And it just kind of built from there. But it was like I always knew I wanted to write, but getting around to, I guess, kind of like giving myself permission to do the kind of writing I really wanted to do was for sure a process.
I could see it's one of the hardest things to overcome too. Kind of like when I talked to a lot of artists, and accepting your style is really hard for a lot of them. Like
Yeah.
what comes out of your hand, kind of like when you're
Mhm.
writing, like what comes out when you are writing and how your voice
Yeah.
comes out and the stories that you are coming up with and thinking of. And you're
Mhm.
like, I want to be Neil Gaiman and Grant Morrison and have those ideas, but like you pull those influences and you filter them,
Yeah.
and just having the courage to like, all right, well, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to try this. And I think that's where
Mhm.
people stop before they even get to being a creator is they can't get themselves to sit down and at least attempt it and just trip a few times. Let yourself fail, write those bad scripts. Like it's all just going to help you down the line.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think for whatever reason, like poetry just kind of, I felt like it came more easily to me. Not that I wrote a bunch of bad poems in the beginning too, but it felt like it came more easily, and it felt like it was a faster process for me to get to the point where I could say like, okay, this is something that I think I could do.
Hmm.
And I think I wanted that with like fiction writing and comics too, but I kind of knew it would be more of a process, and I'd kind of attempt it and like write something short, and it wouldn't be what I'd want. And I would kind of tell myself like, see, that means like, since you can't do it immediately, that means you're not going to be good at this ever.
I've
And it was,
definitely been there for sure. Hands
yeah,
down. Yeah, I know what you mean. Hmm.
it's like you want that immediate validation. You want like the first thing you write to be brilliant. And when it's not, you convince yourself that you're going to be terrible forever. So
Yes.
it was getting to the point where I could kind of say, like, okay, I'm just going to let myself write. And what I write is what I write. And I'm going to learn from that. And it's
Yeah.
okay. Like, you don't have to be brilliant the first time. It's okay to write something. And it's like, it's not what you wanted it to be, because that's how you learn.
And I mean, I had an instance too where there was a story I was working on that I thought was the greatest story I had ever written and worked on. And I put it down for a number of years because it was like nothing was really happening. I couldn't find a creator to work on with me with it. And I went back to that story and I realized like how bad that story was. Like I had too much confidence in that one. Like out of everything I had confidence in. And then I had pitched this idea to someone and he was really willing to draw it. But then like I was like, yeah, let me just do a revise on this idea I'm pitching to you. And I'll send you the script I have for it so you can check it out. And I read the script and I was like, this is bad. This is like just doesn't have a point. Like it just has
Mhm.
like thoughts and ideas. And it was one of those stories where I was like, I'm going to sit myself down and I'm going to write this and I'm going to hope it's the best thing in the world. And I just didn't realize soon enough that it wasn't the best thing in the world. And having to like rethink of a story and rebuild it from like scratch after it's been pitched, you're just like, man,
Mhm.
that takes some salvaging. Like it's been, and it's one of those stories where you just sit in front of your computer where you're like, I don't know what to do with this right now. And I feel like getting stuck when you're writing and you want the idea to come out, or what you were saying earlier, the way the editors have helped you convey feelings and emotions. Like, that's the story that I need an editor for, hands down, to like help
Yeah.
get over that rock and over that hurdle. Cause you like know what you want, but you just don't know
Mhm.
how to like, I don't know how to like just place it there. There's something about it
Yeah.
that you just don't fit.
Yeah, I think it's like for me, I'm too close to it sometimes. Like it's I'm too in my head with it,
Hmm.
and I need that perspective from someone outside to be like, okay, here's how you can fit these pieces together. Um, and it's hard. Like I feel like I get to the point sometimes where I'm like, have I done it even? Like I can't even tell if I've done it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, or even just taking some space from it. Like I've been outlining a time travel story that would be a 4-issue story. And I had this outline and I felt like it wasn't quite where I needed it to be. And I sent it to one of the editors I work with, and he had some super helpful feedback. And so I went back and I was kind of trying to tweak some things. And I'm like, I still, like, it's just still, I can't get it to work. So I emailed him back and I'm like, I'm going to have to put this one on the back burner and I'll circle back to it probably like in February. But I need these ideas to kind of simmer in my brain because I'd kind of gotten to the point where I was just like pressuring myself to be like, you have
Mhm.
to figure this out. It's like nothing
And
good or
that
creative is
stops
going to
you.
come from that.
Exactly. I feel like when, especially with the story I was just referring to, like I was like, this artist is really good. Like I need to figure out the story. And I felt like everything I was writing just wasn't up to par to like that person's
Yeah.
level. And I'm like, I need to get there.
Mhm.
I don't feel like I'm good enough yet. You know, like
Yeah.
you just haven't advanced enough as a writer and it's above your skill set when it just takes time and
Yeah.
patience and getting rid of those negative thoughts and filtering some of that out. I kind of journal in the morning sometimes too, just
Mhm.
to get all the negative thoughts out of my head. So that way, when I do approach the creative writing aspect, I'm like, okay, all
Mhm.
that's all gone and out, and I've talked
Yeah.
enough crap to myself. All right, now we could actually probably have a clear idea come through, and it does help
Mhm.
sometimes. But I get what you mean. Like you're just like, how can I make this meet to what my expectations are for this idea and what I
Yeah.
was imagining myself to be, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because it's different with different projects like that sci-fi that I was talking about with that one. It just like flowed. And
Oh,
then
nice.
I had to do some like tweaking to the outline after, but it just came. And then with this time travel one, it's like pulling teeth.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and it's weird like that, how, like, especially when they're similar. I mean, not, like, similar in the sense that it's all kinda sci-fi in a sense, but,
Mhm.
like, it's weird because 'cause you're like, "I've done this before," you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Why
just a
isn't it
different thing, but why isn't it adding up? And,
Mhm.
when you look at your resources, like, story structure and acts and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and even labeling them out, it's the filler that throws us off, you know? Like, you might know
Yeah.
what's gonna land on what, act 2 is going to start when this moment happens and end when this stuff like that. But then like the gaps in between, you're like, that's the
Yeah.
meat that I just can't figure
Yeah.
out and like fill in, and you get stuck on.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and so like I've been exploring a lot of recent like new publishing groups that have been coming out, especially from
Mhm.
like bigger creators and all that. And I'm noticing a lot like the lack of like diversity in a lot of these new imprints arising.
Mhm.
What has your journey been like as a female creator going into comics, and what's kind of your perspective and your feelings about it as you've approached publishers or seeing some of these new publications come up? Like, do you feel like there's like a barrier for you? Do you think it's harder for you to get work or get noticed in general? Even like, I feel like taken seriously from what I've heard from some creators say. But have you noticed like a shift or improvement in the comic community? Or do you feel like it's still very stagnant in the sense of female representation?
I think it's getting better. I think we definitely still have work to do in terms of the representation of female creators.
Hmm.
Um, I've had in the communities that I'm in, like I've been doing some stuff with Lesser Known and with Comics Launch, and the people in those communities have been really supportive, and kind of my followers on social media have all been really supportive and receptive. Um, so I haven't, I guess, on that side run it like I've gotten a lot of support and encouragement. But the thing that I've kind of noticed is that in a lot of the things that I attempt to do, there just aren't as many women around. Like in some of the competitions that I've been in, um, I'll be like the only woman who's in the finalists or like something like that.
Hmm.
Um, just some of the groups that I've been in, I'll be like the only woman, and I'm wondering, I'm like, why is it like, why?
Yeah, I
I
feel
know
you.
there are women creators who are doing really impressive things. Like, why aren't there more of us in these, like in these competitions or in these whatever, in these like anthologies? And I think it's I think that's where we kind of need more representation, is in the things that we're doing that are kind of things that can level us up and get us noticed. There need to be more women in those areas for sure. And I think it's getting better, but we still have a ways to go with it. Yeah, it's interesting, and just like different calls that I've been in and with different groups and things, and there aren't a lot of, it's like you can tell
Yeah,
that there
yeah.
still aren't as many women. And I don't think it's that there's like a shortage of women creating, because I know them and I see them and I work with them.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know if it's just fewer women getting noticed in these like groups and things that are pushing, that are, kind of the things that help you level up. Or, I mean, I think that's what it is. And I think things like in the negative space, like the negative space competition that I won was the women's writing competition. And I think things like that are super important and really helpful. And I think if we can have more of those kinds of things, that would be one thing to, like, for specifically women creators, a space, because negative space, I think their kind of whole goal is helping mentoring new creators and helping new creators make connections that they can then use to sort of level up. And so having those spaces that are reaching out to women, I think is really important.
I love that. And Apollo, luckily we've done 3 anthologies already. And I was I was looking at these publications that are popping up and these new imprints that are popping up from like some, people that are already in the comic book industry and whatnot. And I was like, man, I wonder why it's so hard for them to find or fit in female creators. And I looked at our catalog and I'm like, how? Because we are packed with female creators. Like 2 of my artists are like amazing female artists and it's something I had never thought about until like the last couple of weeks as I examined things. And I was like, I'm really lucky, like out of the gate, we've done a good thing by, already having female creators of like any types just joining us and making art and promoting them. But I feel like it's because we launched this submission aspect and we took submissions from everybody, and I do feel like there's less females taking that shot and that risk in that sense. But I feel like we're trying to help encourage them to always do that. And by giving them a platform and giving them a voice and like bringing them out and everything, I think that's going to help out. And hopefully on the show, I'm really like, it's a big goal of mine, especially once I noticed this, like over the holiday season, I was like, I feel like a big goal for ours is just to find as many of these creators that really aren't getting the spotlight and really shift it back to them. Cause I feel like they're yelling for, we have great craft and great work, but some people just kind of like overlook it or just not giving them the proper, promotional needs or, attempts into an anthology or, accepting and filtering properly. Because I feel even with some anthology submissions, and the way we do it is that we kind of make sure like not only do we have like the right stories, but like the people that are involved with it that are all balanced out. And I think that last step is where a lot of people create it, because I could tell when some people kind of force feed and they're just like, oh, we're going to have to toss a female creator in here because we don't have one. So we'll just take anything and put it in there just to fix them without actually, making it organic and making it natural, like, and that throws me so much. And it baffles me because, like you said, they are out there and they are making great work.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think it's great what you're doing with this podcast and with anthologies that you've been working on. And because like I've been on podcasts where it's kind of like they'll have on multiple creators who have like live Kickstarters and or not even that, but like multiple creators. And I've been on panels that are similar, like I was on a couple virtual panels, and it's like I'm the only woman on these panels. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I can't be the only, and it makes no sense. But I think part of it too is maybe just the people kind of running those things, reach out to people they know, that kind of thing, or just there's not as much visibility. But yeah, I think kind of making it organic, because it doesn't have to be something that's forced. And I think
Yeah.
maybe people feel like it has to be, and they don't want to have to do that. But there really are a lot of women creators making really exciting things, and it can be organic. And I think that's definitely the right approach to it, is just to kind of make sure that from the ground up, when you're building these things, that you're doing it in a way where you're reaching out to a wide range of contributors.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're getting like diverse submissions, and you're getting like pools of guests for your shows and your panels that are diverse, and you're not having to force it. Like, you have the pool of really talented people to choose from kind of there for you.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's something I feel like, yeah, on the show, it's going to be a big goal of ours now that we've done a few episodes, and you kind of check mark some things and being like, you kind of analyze a few episodes and be like, what do we need to add and subtract and like work on, and from intros to outros to everything, you know? And I was just like, just doing that comic book research. And when you type in comic book creators and you look on Google, it's just a bunch of white old dudes. And it's Frank Miller, it's Jack Kirby. It's, it's all the, great, fantastic creators that we all know and adore. But you're like, I'm looking at the same picture, like all around. And it doesn't, just like art is diverse and amazing. And we talk about how stories are diverse and amazing. And it's not just superheroes. Like and the creators aren't just one type of people either. And I feel like indie communities like this are what are trying to really pull that out. And I feel like it starts to get leveled off once you get above the underground and into the indie, actual publishers. That's where it starts leveling out. And I'm like, we're hitting a wall here. We need to try to find a way to break that wall and just keep on going to the top. And really just highlight that.
Yeah, for sure.
But Sarah, it has been lovely talking to you tonight. Why don't you tell us about your plans for 2024 and where we could find you this year?
Yeah, so I am doing the fulfillment for issue number 2 of No Spell Lasts Forever right now. Easy is about to get started on the artwork for issue number 3. So that'll be coming up. I hopefully, and I've got my my Mad Cave project coming up. That'll be something published with them through the talent search. So that'll be happening. I'm working on a couple shorts. I'm working on a short for Lesser Known's horror anthology. Cool. And then I've got that sci-fi that might be going somewhere, Mayfly. And then what else? I'm going to be doing just as far as like Substack and social media stuff, trying to be a little more intentional with that. So kind of honing my focus a little bit with the content that I'm doing there. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a rebrand of that in the new year. So that's happening. And as far as where you can find me, the Substack is sarahlindsaycook.substack.com. And then I'm on Instagram. Also, I'm on Twitter, but I'm more on Instagram.
Yeah, Twitter is a weird place right now, no matter what.
Yeah, it is a bizarre space right now.
Yes, honestly. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a great time. I can't wait to have you back on the show later this year and talk about your project, what you're up to. And we could check out your work. Again, check it out at the bottom. Check it out the CWS bookstore. It's everywhere. So thank you for today. And for all of our listeners, keep making comics, keep having fun, and stay inspired. Looking for high quality printing, fast turnaround, and the industry's best customer service? Look no further than Comix Wellspring. Trusted by thousands of indie comic creators, Comix Wellspring is proven to be the go-to comic book printer. So when you're ready to bring your comic books to life, go to comixwellspring.com and be sure to check out one of the best platforms to sell your physical and digital comics online, the CWS bookstore. Remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell to see our lives come out twice every single week on YouTube and podcast platforms. And also tag us when you share your favorite episodes and moments from the show. And remember, creators, thanks for hanging, keep creating, and stay inspired.
With Comix Wellspring.